Alright, so I'm going to get right into this because I want to provide you guys some, I'm looking over here, dang it, some comfort. Usually I'm used to my phone being flipped the other way, but it's flipped, the camera's here. It used to be on that side. It's flipped. Anyway, as you see by the title, we're talking about my panic disorder, my health anxiety, my anxiety in general that I just recently developed a month ago, and how it's taken like the most toll on me that I've ever felt in my life. I keep looking over here. Wherever I look, you know I'm talking to you, right there. So right now I'm dealing with tonsillitis, I think. I went to the clinic about 2 hours ago to get that checked out. Shortness of breath, of course, it's probably anxiety. But if I have a panic attack during this video, because I trigger myself talking about it, or something happens, I'll just cut it out, or whatever. Or maybe you get to watch the truth. So I'm having some shortness of breath right now. That might be due to anxiety, or I'm nervous to talk about it, the tonsillitis that I have right now or whatever. So I have a cough drop in my mouth. If I talk funny, that's probably why. Also, I'm dealing with some brain fog because of all this anxiety. So if I say things that don't really make sense, or I just kind of have to really think and focus about it, that's why. This is probably not going to be an edited video. It's just going to be uploaded because I don't have the energy. Feeling okay mentally right now. I'm alright. But I wanted to talk about just in general my panic disorder, my anxiety, my health anxiety, and just in general. And comfort is the main point of the video. I want to provide some comfort to you guys, because if you ever have an anxiety attack or a panic attack, I want you to know that it feels awful, but you are fine. You are absolutely fine, and you're not dying. So let's talk about first, before I talk about my first panic attack, let's talk about what I used to think of anxiety. I used to think of depression sort of the same way, but I had this big naive umbrella definition that I'd define anxiety before I ever experienced it. I kind of thought of anxiety as like, and a YouTuber, I forget her name, but a YouTuber mentioned this as well, that she thought, she was talking about her anxiety story and her panic attack story, she thought that anxiety, how I thought of it before I had anxiety, was kind of like the feeling of being nervous before a test, or nervous before giving a speech. You have the butterflies, you might be a little sweaty. But I just thought of anxiety as nervousness, or maybe extreme nervousness. But I did not know that it came with physical symptoms. So my panic attack story. I'd been taking CBD for a while. Again, here's a brain fog. It's hard for me to think and process through this stuff, and I might work myself up and maybe have a panic attack. I'm just warning you. Don't want to think about that too much because I don't have one. But I've been taking a CBD for a while prior to my panic attack with my girlfriend, and every time I took it, the CBD can have negative effects for some people. For me, it just caused some mild brain fog here and there, but it wasn't bad. It was like, when I took it and it set in, it was like when it reached its peak, it was like every 15, 20 seconds I get hit with like a brain fog wave. Super hard to describe. But one night, my girlfriend gave me a CBD gummy from a vape shop that her stepmother's daughter had got. So we don't know what was in that. I recommend you buy CBD gummies or oil or vape, whatever, from a reliable source, even though the majority of CBD products are not regulated through the FDA. So anyway, I pull up at last break, 9:30 break, my girlfriend gives me a CBD gummy. It's yellow. Pineapple. Never forget it. So I took that and we went to Speedway. I drank an energy drink, took the CBD gummy, felt fine. 2 hours later, I'm driving to pick her up, and we work in schools. So her school is quite literally across the street from mine. Literally, it is a 20-ish second drive. So I drive right across the street to pick her up at 11:30, 2 hours after I had the CBD gummy and the energy drink. And I'm sitting there waiting, and my girlfriend told me that she was having trouble getting her lock out of, this is hard to talk about, she was having trouble getting her lock out of locker. And I remember sitting there, I'm getting nervous thinking about it now. I remember sitting there and I was waiting for her, and suddenly this physically feeling, like I could actually feel the shape, it's weird, funnel feeling of adrenaline, like did this over my face, like pulled over my face, like this funnel shape, and it came to a cone. It felt weird. It was just this rush of adrenaline in my head, and I went, and it took my breath away, and I'm like, what is this? I said, whoa, I don't feel good. And I stepped out of the car. And I remember stepping out of the car. I'm getting really close in detail, but I want you guys to know that there's hope and that you're fine. But I want you to know that panic attacks are literally so unbearably scary, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And I remember getting out of the car, and then when I got out, it was as if someone pushed me out of the car. Like, I felt out of body. Literally, when you hear these figures of speech, I don't want you to think that I'm saying things phrased not literally. I literally mean that it felt like I was actually detached from my body. Everything felt foggy. Things didn't look foggy, as in physically my vision, but things felt foggy. I had tunnel vision, so I felt like someone else pushed me out of the car. And when the adrenaline, I was just sitting there, I was waiting for her, and I just felt the adrenaline, and I went, and I took a big inhale, and I'm like, what is this? So I step out, and then my heart starts to pound a little, and I'm like, okay, I'm just getting a little nervous. And it got worse because again, I told you that she was having trouble getting her key out of the lock. And I experienced depersonalization when it felt like someone, or derealization, it felt like someone else made me walk out of the car, but it was my body, fight or flight. It felt as if I wasn't the one that got myself out of the car. So derealization is a common symptom of anxiety. What does it feel like? Depersonalization and derealization is basically severe brain fog, and it makes you feel detached. It's your body's flight or fight. It's that rush of adrenaline, and it screws with your hormones, and it basically feels like you're kind of in a dream almost. Not like you're completely in a dream, like you're dreaming. No, dreaming. You know you're alive, but things feel weird, kind of quiet, detached, odd, fuzzy. And I remember what made the panic attack worse was she was taking forever to get out of the building to get her key out of the lock. And for some weird reason, an intrusive thought or just a negative thought ran through my head. Am I the last person on earth? Because I was feeling the derealization that I've never felt in my entire life. I felt detached, and I'm like, where'd everyone go? It's 11:30 at night. We got off work. Let me try to take a drink of water. So it was 11:30 at night, and I remember feeling detached, and it was so quiet because there's no traffic at 12 in the morning, rarely where we live. It was just quiet. Just the slight wind. She wasn't coming out, and I was freaking out. I'm like, where'd everyone go? What happened to the people on Earth? She comes out, and then my heart starts to pound. And I can see it visibly, my shirt moving just slightly. And I'm trying to act it out, so you know how bad panic attacks are. I'm like, babe, I don't feel good. And I'm trying to act, of course. I'm saying, babe, I don't feel good. Can you please call 911? She's like, she kind of freaked out, but she was calm and kind of smiley. Not like she didn't care, but she knew that I was okay and that I wasn't dying. But to me, I sincerely believed I was dying. That's a common thing with anxiety or panic attack sufferers, which of course they go hand in hand, panic attack and anxiety. I sincerely believed I was dying because there was no real catalyst for my heart to pound, for me to see the tunnel vision or to feel tunnel vision or to notice it, and to experience the derealization. You know, of course the catalyst was the panic attack, but it just came out of nowhere. You know, my heart would pound if I worked out or went for a jog, but I was calm. I wasn't running, and my heart started to pound. So of course it's going to freak me out because I wasn't doing anything. And then the more I started to think about it, I'm dying. One of the worst symptoms that I have that I fear the most when I go through panic attacks is my throat feels like it starts to close. So I'm sitting there and it feels like my mouth and my throat. Ooh, I'm trying to hold off panic attack because it's hard to talk about this, but I'm doing okay. I remember my throat felt so dry. My mouth felt so unbelievably dry. And then I see about 7-8 minutes later, she calls the paramedics coming, the ambulance. And that just made it worse because when you think of getting into an ambulance to go to the ER, which I did, you think of someone dying. When you see it in TV shows or movies, whenever anyone's in the back of an ambulance, they're hurt or they're injured. So he comes out and he's like, so what's going on? And I said, I'm having trouble thinking. I can't see. That's another symptom I had. Let me run through all the symptoms. Heart palpitations, meaning I could physically feel my heart pounding, super fast heart rate, dry throat, dry mouth, really dry, horrendous, no saliva, nothing. Bad derealization, feeling foggy, distant, hard to think and hard to speak. Of course, you know, the dry throat and the dry mouth, that makes it harder to speak as well. But I was thinking, I'm having a heart attack, I'm having a stroke. My main concern, honestly, with heart attack, you didn't just fall in the bathroom, but Where was I? Let me take a drink. I'm getting dry mouth. I'm talking about it. So more symptoms: dry mouth, feeling faint. When it gets really bad, when I start to hyperventilate, when I can't get a good deep breath, I get really lightheaded because there's an abundance of what is it? Not enough carbon dioxide, I think. You're getting plenty of oxygen, but there's not enough carbon dioxide, I believe. So I felt super faint. And that didn't kick in until I got in the ambulance. So my throat feels like it's closing. I feel like I'm gonna start choking. I feel like I can't breathe. It feels like I'm kind of breathing through this straw, or a bigger straw almost, maybe about that big. I feel like I can't get a good deep breath because my breath's so shallow because my heart's pounding and I'm freaking out. It was when they strapped me into the bed of the ambulance when it reached its peak. I was so out of it. Let me tell you something. For you guys that have panic attacks, or in the future when you will have a panic attack, you are going to, depending on the severity, the majority of people, you're probably going to fear that you are dying. Because I felt like I could not breathe. I was saying prayers to God. I was thinking about my family. That's how horrendous panic attacks are. You know, before I would think panic attacks were just, oh, I'm nervous. Where's my car keys? Kind of like that sort of feeling. Like, I lost my car keys. Where's the baby in the house or something? This is hard to talk about. But panic attacks are so much more than just mental feelings. It's physical feelings. I remember lying in the back of the ambulance, feeling like I was breathing through a straw. I was feeling like I was going to faint. I literally felt like I was on the edge of death. That death was creeping around the corner and was going to take me from that ambulance ride. And some thoughts ran through my head. Even now, sometimes, since I've been through this and I've had more panic attacks, sometimes I think to myself, did I get off that ambulance? Did I die? But I didn't. I'm still here. The things, I still experience brain fog. That's kind of creepy, you know, weird to deal with. Trying to speed this up because I know it's going to be a long video. And I was so out of it too. I felt like I had a stroke or something. I could lift all my arms up and whatever, and I was in the ambulance. I was thanking the paramedics. I was thanking the paramedics for what they do, almost as if I was kind of telling them, please try and figure this out, because all they were doing was, they did an EKG. They said, yeah, your heart rate's up, but your heart looks good. They knew I wasn't having a stroke. So that was relieving, but I could not think of anything but my breathing and my heart rate. And I remember looking down as I'm laying in the ambulance bed and seeing my shirt ruffle as my heart is just absolutely hammering away. And I remember I said this, but it felt like I didn't because of the derealization. I was laying back feeling like I was about to faint forever and die. I said, I feel funny. And my feet went numb. And my arms felt so heavy. And I'm like, stroke, I'm dying. It's just panic attack. That's how debilitating they are. I remember moving my feet uncomfortably, strapped to the ambulance bed as we're rushing towards the ER, or not rushing because they knew I wasn't dying. But I remember moving my feet and they felt like I had concrete boots on. They were so numb. And I remember, and now you'd think now someone who's not had a panic attack or an anxiety disorder, you'd think that I would be dying. I'm probably going to get comments saying, dude, you might want to go to the ER. Well, these are my discharge papers from the 6 times I went to the ER in the span of like a month. So I'm good, okay? I've also got all these anxiety medications. You know, if you don't, I take like 2, but these are trial and error basically. Anyway, so I went to IU West. Joe Podge, this patient was seen today at IU West Hospital Emergency Department. Patient may return to work or school on the next day, the 10th, February 10th. Because I got to the hospital midnight, so it was February 8th when the panic attack happened, 11:30. When I got to the hospital, it was the next day, it was the morning, so, you know. Anyway, so it peaked in the ambulance, and I remember I was just so, I don't even know. There's no words in the English language or any language, no matter how many syllables or how complex a word is that can describe how horrific panic attacks are. It's not the physical feelings that make you feel like you're dying, it's just, well, of course it is. The physical feelings aren't painful. Some people might have chest pains. I never had that. But it's just the onset of these physical symptoms that make you feel like you're dying. The pounding heart, the feeling like your throat's closing. Horrible. So I remember being wheeled into the ER, into a little room with another girl that was freaking out. This older lady that was freaking out about her throat or whatever. And then they were telling her she was fine. I don't know what that was about. I remember them wheeling me in, and I kept thinking to myself, they're going to cut me open and work on my heart. They're going to cut me open. Something's wrong with my heart. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. But the panic attack had dwindled. It was the worst in the ambulance, and when they wheeled me in, I remember being so out of it. I had the hardest time trying to listen to the people trying to get my info. Like, what's your name? You know, where do you work? And they were calm because I think they knew everything was going to be fine. They thought it was a bad trip from the CBD gummy. But I think the panic attack was caused by the energy drink and the CBD gummy, because I told you earlier the CBD gummy can kind of cause brain fog, which I think was kind of an onset or a catalyst for the panic attack. So I remember this guy that I actually went to high school with was one of the like receptionists or whatever, and he came into the room with his computer. And he's like, "Hey, did you go to Danville?" And I'm like, "What? Did you?" And he's asking, "Okay, what's your stepmother's name? And they were asking me questions. I remember in the ambulance ride, they were asking me, "What's your name? What do you do for a living?" Because they want to see if you're having a stroke. And of course, passed that with flying colors, although it felt really hard to talk. Even now, I'm experiencing just slight derealization, so it feels like I'm not talking. But I'm good, not having a panic attack. So anyway, I'm so out of it the entire time. I felt so weak. I just kept closing my eyes. I felt like I couldn't hold my head up. The pounding heart and everything, my heart rate was still high in the hundreds, low hundreds in the emergency room. But that was mostly gone, right? My throat was still horrendously dry, and I remember after the panic attack had died down, I was laying in that bed in that room, big bright room. My throat and my esophagus just hurt so bad because of just the dryness and hyperventilating. My throat was hurting for like 2 days afterwards. And I remember them talking to me, and I was really trying to focus, and it got better the longer I was there. So I think I was in there for 4 hours, about 3.5, 4 hours. They checked my heart. They did an EKG. They did all this blood work. One of the nurses scared me by saying, "We got to check your enzymes for your heart because your heart rate's been up there for quite some time." So that scared me. But the blood work came back fine. I was low on potassium, kind of really low on potassium, but I've looked it up. Of course, Dr. Google. And stress levels can lower potassium, and my potassium's been fine since, so I think it was just the panic attack. That was the worst day of my life. That was absolutely the worst day of my life and the scariest day of my life. And since then, that panic attack has brought on health anxiety. It has brought on brain fog. It has brought on dizziness. It has brought on feeling of unsteadiness. It has brought on intrusive thoughts. It has brought on a whole host of physical and mental symptoms that I have to deal with on a daily basis. Most are pretty good and I can manage, and some days I feel fine, but a little brain fog, a little foggy. Anyway, finally get discharged. I'm going to try and speed this up. Finally get discharged from the hospital. I'm feeling so much better. My sister's taking me home. She had to give me a ride because they gave me a sedative, I believe. I had to have a ride because I think they did give me a sedative and I had to have a ride. But I didn't drive there. Ambulance took me. But my girlfriend's mom drove my car home. Thank you to her, sincerely. I remember my sister taking me home, and I didn't sleep that night. Like, I tried to, but I was just so, worried and thinking about it. I'm like, what was that? Because they didn't tell me it was a panic attack. Everyone thought it was a trip from the CBD and the energy drink. So I'm like, okay. And they when I was first wheeled into that room, they said, well, this isn't a stroke, because I kept asking. I was worried. They said, this isn't a stroke. This is your heart. And I'm like, oh no, heart problems. But no, everything came back perfect. I actually have a really low heart rate naturally, so yay. That's random, but so things to say to calm myself. So know that if you ever have a panic attack, you ever have an anxiety attack, I do want you to go to the ER. Now, don't do what I did and go 6 times afterwards because you have health anxiety. I'm not saying that's bad. But go and get checked out. If you feel these symptoms that I'm feeling, it can overlap heart attacks, not really strokes, I'm sure maybe. 9 times out of 10, or 9.9 times out of 10, you're having a panic attack. You're not having a stroke or a heart attack, especially if you're younger. This can happen to anyone. Panic attacks can happen to anyone. But I do want you to go to the ER if you feel these things. You need to get checked out because there's a very, 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 very slight, small chance it's your heart or it's something more serious. But if you feel these things coming on and it's bad, you will know. Trust me. You're not going to, I feel a little sick. I feel a little weird. No, you have a panic attack. You're going to feel like you're dying. Go to the ER. It's, if you have white coat syndrome, and I don't really like saying that phrase because I feel like it's a bit insensitive. If you're afraid of hospitals, you got to tough through it because half the battle of getting better is you got to get checked out. CT scan, blood work, whatever to ease your mind. So after that, 2 days later, thought I was fine after I got discharged from the hospital. 2 days later, I'm laying in bed. My girlfriend goes to work and I called off work because I was just dealing with the stress, and I'm like, what is this? That was terrifying. You know, I just didn't feel like going to work. I had no energy, barely eating. So I'm laying in bed. I needed a nap because I was tired because I didn't sleep the previous night when I got home. So right as I'm laying down, I'm falling asleep, or about to fall asleep, the rush, the funnel of adrenaline, I'm like doing the same inhale, and I sit up. But then it goes away after literally 3-4 seconds. I'm like, what was that? And then I called IU West. I'm like, hey, it happened to me again, but it only lasted a couple seconds. Should I come back? Or I honestly kind of forget who I called and what. I called IU West, asked, can we do a CT scan of my brain? I was worried about brain tumor or strokes, even though I was worried about brain tumors and strokes, not really seizures. But I called and I said, can we please do CT scans? And they said, no, you got to get approval from your pediatric doctor, my actual doctor, Dr. Glover. She's a wonderful lady. Hope you see this video, by the way. Man, this cough drop is killing me. But they said, no, you have to get approval from your doctor. So I called them, and she wasn't in there, so she couldn't give me approval. So then I called the ER. I went to IU West, which is in Avon, Indiana. I live in Danville, Indiana, and they're straight shot from Danville to Avon, 8-minute drive. So then I called Danville, where I live, Danville Hospital, and I say, hey, can we do a CT scan? I don't feel right. I keep having these surges of adrenaline, and I feel off. I have this brain fog, and they said, no, you gotta contact your doctor. Actually, hold on, I messed up the story a little bit. So, you know, it's weird. I actually went back to the hospital 2 days after the panic attack when I was discharged. Went back because I was feeling the brain fog, the derealization, and it scared me. So they did an EKG again, real kind of quick checkup, and they said I'm fine again. They discharged me in like an hour. Then I went home, and then what I was saying now, the adrenaline rush as I'm laying in bed, I called because I said, hey, can I speak to the doctor that I spoke to see if we can do a CT scan because I think I have a tumor or a stroke or something. And I called Danville, and they say no. And I'm looking up symptoms. I'm on the internet Googling things, which don't ever do that. You're going to be diagnosed with stroke, tumor, brain cancer, lung cancer, celiac disease. When everyone on YouTube, all these creators and people and doctors say do not use Google, don't. You need to go to a clinic, an ER. You need to get checked out, and you need to take some comfort in knowing that 99.99999% of the time you are never going to be discharged if there's something wrong with you that needs attention. Because they got my potassium back up, they gave me some magnesium when I went to the ER by ambulance that first night. Very expensive ambulance ride, by the way. But they got my levels back up and everything, and they checked out my heart. They said I was good to go, and they discharged me, and I'm thinking, oh, you're definitely missing something. And that's typical with health anxiety. You don't really believe any doctor. Like you do, you take some comfort when they reassure you, but then the intrusive thoughts or the negative thoughts come back, and you're just back in the vicious cycle again. So I go to the Danville ER because no one wanted to do a CT scan after I went back to IU West for the second time because I felt the brain fog and derealization. Mentioned that like 2-3 minutes ago. So I go to the Danville ER, and I was more comfortable going to the Danville ER because I grew up in Danville, and I've been there before, more familiar. So I go there, and I describe to the receptionist my symptoms, whatever. They take my blood pressure, blah, blah, blah. Then I see a nurse. She comes into the room when I'm brought back to the room. She does the stroke test, push against her arms, hold my arms up, walk in a straight line, blah, blah, blah. She said it was anxiety, and the male doctor that came in eventually said it was anxiety, and he said, I'm 99.5% sure we're not going to find anything on the CT scan. Now, let me mention, this is not to scare anyone, but MRIs with contrast are like the most accurate sort of brain scan. But if you have tumors or bleeding, or if you've had a stroke, CT scan is going to pick it up. So while MRIs with contrast or CTs with contrast, with dye, is the most accurate, you get a normal CT scan, you're good to go. I just want to say that. So the doctor, both the nurse and the male doctor, or male nurse, says to me, I doubt we're going to find anything. It's going to be an expensive CT scan, but if you want to ease your mind, we can do that. So they prescribed me anxiety med. We do the CT scan, and I'm sitting there watching TV. They have the little TV in the hospital room, and I'm thinking, they're probably not going to find anything, Job. You know, that was my first kind of moment of clarity. I'm thinking they're probably not going to find anything. I was kind of relaxed, because even then I was relaxed because I'm like, okay, well, if they find anything, now we know the issue. They come back, CT's fine. CT scan of my brain is fine. So long story short, I'm discharged after being there for like 2.5 hours, 3 hours. So I go to Kroger, pick up my prescription, all the while I'm dealing with just kind of slight dizziness, unsteadiness, brain fog, derealization. You know, it's freaking me out. Not good. Not good at all. Gosh, what a fun ride. So I remember when I went to the ER that first night by ambulance, I stayed home and I was just watching TV, just lying on the couch. I couldn't get up and do anything. I couldn't eat, couldn't lift. I stopped lifting for a week. So then, you know, finally, it was weird. I had like mini panic attacks when I was trying to fall asleep after my first visit to the ER. I'd be getting right there, about to fall asleep, and then the rush, the funnel feeling of adrenaline that tingles down my face, and I would stand up and just bend down and just breathe, and it would go away. And those were not full-blown panic attacks. Those were like mini panic attacks. So then it's like 2 to 3 weeks after going to the ER by ambulance. For some reason, I'm driving to pick up Amber, and I didn't like being in the car because I associated that with my first panic attack. I didn't like driving at night because I associated the nighttime, the car, parking at the school she works with the panic attack, because that's where I had it. I had it in the car, stepped out of the car, and was walking around pacing with all the symptoms at her work. So, it's absolutely horrible. So we're driving, and somehow I got it into my head that my eyes felt heavy and that they were going to shut. For some weird reason, I got this negative thought, my eyes feel heavy. Is this eye strain? What is this? My eyes feel so heavy. They feel like they're going to close. My eyelids feel like they're going to close. Am I having a stroke? So we're driving to get the baby after work, because we always get the baby at the babysitter after work at about 12 in the morning. And I'm driving, and I start to feel the panic again. I start to feel the panic set in, and we go in, we get the baby, and as I'm standing in the babysitter's house, it kind of dies down, and then we start driving towards Danville. Heart pounding, throat dry, mouth is dry as heck, hyperventilating. I can feel my heart pounding on both sides of my throat, eyes wide as heck. I'm doing the stroke test. Ever since the nurse did the stroke test when I went to the Danville ER, I would do it, and I still do it sometimes today. I'll walk around the house, I'll walk in a straight line. I'll hold my arms out to see if they don't fall. I'll smile in the mirror to see if both sides are even. I'll look at my eyelids to see if they're droopy. I'll speak to see if I can speak. I'll think to see if I can think clearly. And I'm driving and I'm like, babe, I think we need to go to the ER. Because, you know, when I thought to myself after I had my first panic attack, when the second one comes, I'll know it's a panic attack and I'll be fine. But then I feel those physical symptoms again and I think, I'm dying, they missed something. So we're rushing towards the ER. I'm speeding like 5 miles over the speed. I don't speed. I don't. I go the speed limit. So we're speeding towards the Danville ER. I go in. I describe my symptoms. Talking to the receptionist made me feel better. But then when we sat down and I couldn't move and I felt confined to the chair, she's taking my blood pressure, checking my oxygen. The first time I really, well, not the first, never mind. No, I said I felt the horrible fainting feeling in the ambulance. So disregard that. But I felt the fainting feeling come on me again. And I was so close to looking up at the nurse and saying, I'm going to faint, I'm dying. I was right on the edge of saying, help, help. I was screaming internally. I felt so faint, I couldn't catch my breath. My heart's absolutely pounding. I'm sorry I'm getting into it. I want you to know that this is how bad panic attacks can be. She's taking my blood pressure. I feel so confined because there's something squeezing my bicep and my tricep. My oxygen is being taken. I feel I can't get up and run around or pace because the wire's connected to the machine, and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm gonna faint. I'm like rubbing my head to comfort myself. Horrible, absolutely horrible. So we go back to the room, and I'm laying there in bed, and they're checking the same people that I saw when I went to the same male nurse or doctor that I saw when I went to the Danville ER, my third ER trip. He was in that room again. He said, hey, again. I said, hey. He's like, so anxiety or whatever? I'm like, yeah. Then this mental health worker came in with her computer, and she wanted to schedule me to get me set up because they knew that my anxiety was pretty bad. So I remember getting in the gown. Again, they did an EKG, I think, or blood. What did they do? I think they just checked me out, but I got in the gown anyways. And I remember laying in bed, and panic attack was still going. I felt just like I was in the ambulance ride, but a little bit better. I could breathe. My throat wasn't as dry. I felt like I could breathe a bit better, but it got worse when I turned around to see my blood pressure was like 170 over 90, or 170 over 100. And it sent me into the same super dry throat, super dry mouth. I think this was as close as I ever came to fainting, which, by the way, very unlikely you'll faint with a panic attack. You can faint by hyperventilating, but kind of in between hyperventilating and normal breathing, you're not really going to faint. But if you severely hyperventilate, yes, you can faint. A lot of people say you can't faint with a panic attack, but if you hyperventilate enough, I'm sure you can. I remember looking back, seeing my blood pressure super high, and I was holding the paper. Oh, gosh, it makes me so sad to just imagine myself like that. It just sucks. But I remember having the mental health papers that the mental health worker gave me, like just giving me some numbers for some mental health services to call. And I remember my arm getting really weak, and my eyes started to close. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm fainting. And then, wake myself back up. Like coming out of it, or my body bringing me out of it. I never fainted once. Although I can tell you that, say this is the line to fainting, I was rubbing that thing during my panic attacks. I would never merge fully, but I was right on the atoms. And I would feel like I was going to faint. Literally would feel like I was going to faint. I got so weak, and I would close my eyes, and then I would never faint. I just open my eyes again, and my breathing would naturally, as the adrenaline wears off and as I get exhausted, my breathing would go back to normal. But then, after that ER trip, then about a week and a half later, I went back again because I felt like I couldn't think. I couldn't speak. I had some brain fog, derealization, but about, 2 weeks after I went to that ER, driving, saying my eyes felt heavy and all that. When I went back, I didn't even want my dad and my stepmom started to get on me because insurance was getting on me. I am in serious debt from this. So remember in the beginning of the video when I told you that my naive brain thought that anxiety and panic attacks were just nervousness, stress, like before speaking in front of the class or before taking a test or presenting or having a job interview. I will tell you confidently that I thought so many times, sincerely, legitimately, factually, in my head, I believed I was dying. And here I am. Not perfect. Broken a little bit. No, we're not broken. Cracked, but not broken. It has been literally the toughest month of my life ever. But we're making progress, and we're doing well, I think. So, words of comfort. The panic or the physical symptoms, I want to comfort you guys with that. If you're worried about physical symptoms after your panic attacks, when you're calm, you're going through your day, but you're like, man, I still feel these things. I still feel short of breath. I still feel like I can't hold my head up. My eyes still feel heavy. My eyes are strainy. I still feel brain fog. I still feel derealization. I think I'm going insane. If you can think that you're going insane, this is commonly tossed around, but it's very much true. If you think you're going insane and you're really worried about going insane, you're not insane. So throw that out the window. But I'm going to tell you some physical symptoms that carried, even when I was calm, going to work, at the store, that would carry over days after or weeks after my panic attacks. So brain fog never really went away. It would go away when I get better, but then I'd have like a mini panic attack or something would freak me out. Or even I'd be fine. I'd go to sleep. I'd wake up the next day and brain fog would be back. Derealization comes on and off. Sometimes that just depends. Shortness of breath sometimes if I get worked up, obviously, but it's not really there when I'm calm. I had tremors, which really freaked me out, which I thought was a neurological problem. I remember thinking I had ALS. Again, I have health anxiety, so I'm constantly hyper aware of every feeling, every tingle, every pain, every sensation, how I swallow, how I think. Very hyper aware of my body. And And I remember my girlfriend went to work, and this was like, I think 2 weeks after my first panic attack when I went to the ER. This is about 2 weeks after. Something freaked me out. I for some reason watched a girl have a stroke in a church on YouTube. Real video. She slumps over into someone's arms, and it freaked me out. I called my dad. I said, Dad, I can't be alone. Can you please just come get me? I'm not about to cry. I had to burp. I said, Dad, can you please come get me? I don't feel right. Right, I don't. What the heck? Face looked funny. See, there's health anxiety right there, thinking I'm... Anyway, freaked me out. I started thinking about someone I watched named Pee Wee Toms on YouTube. This guy died of cancer, and it really got in my head, and I started to think, am I dying? What is this? I'm dying. I have a heart problem, I have cancer or something. So I go over to my dad's house. I just couldn't be alone any longer. You know, it really comforts me when I'm around people, even if I don't really like them, because I feel like if I have a medical emergency or I faint or something happens to me, someone can be there to call 911. I feel like if I'm alone and something happens, which something won't, not yet at least, I've got a good another maybe 60 years, 70 years hopefully, but I did not want to be alone. You know, my girlfriend was at work, and I get sadder at night. I always have in life. I always got more sad when night rolled in, just because it's nighttime. Nighttime always made me a little bit sad, because the sun's gone, everything's darker. My dad lives currently like 7 minutes away from my apartment. So he drove, he picked me up. I didn't feel like driving, and I spent the night with him. It was bad, man. It was horrible. I wasn't even having panic attacks. I've only had 3 panic attacks, but the health anxiety and the anxiety that I'm dying and the physical feelings have just not really stopped. They've kind of gotten better. Some days I don't have any, but I'm always now thinking about, when's my next panic attack? Am I gonna die? You know, I used to love sleep. Sleep to me used to be an escape. To where I could lay down if I'm stressed or if I'm anxious. I could sleep, close my eyes, and feel better. But now I'm afraid to go to sleep. Now it's reversed. I'm scared of being asleep, and I'd rather embrace the anxiety and be awake than go to sleep because I feel like I'm gonna die. It is not, and you'll never truly know what it's like unless you experience health anxiety or any anxiety disorder and panic disorder. The video is primarily about my panic attacks, but of course we're talking about my health anxiety, so it's a mixed bag of a video. But you'll never know what it's like until you experience it. Right? I never thought panic attacks had physical symptoms. I thought it was just extreme worriness, or being extremely worried. And here I sit, having gone through hell, realizing that it is a host of physical symptoms. You think you're dying because you don't feel right. You get super tired and lethargic and out of it, and you can have chest pain, chest heaviness, shortness of breath, dry throat, dry mouth, heart palpitations, pounding heart, nausea, dizziness, tingling feet, tingling limbs, heavy limbs, feeling like you can't think or speak, feeling like you're going to faint, lightheaded, confusion, blurred vision even. It's horrible. Then I remember somehow I got into my head that weekend when I was staying over with my dad and my stepmother, I got into my head somehow that I had ALS because my head felt heavy for some reason. One day I was at a flea market and my head felt really heavy. All of a sudden, I'm like, whoa, what is this? I can't hold my head up. Of course I could, but it just felt like I was straining to hold my head up. So I call my dad again. Can I come over? And he picks me up, and I remember crying in front of him, bawling. I never did that in front of my dad. Like, after, you know, my 10th or 11th birthday, moving on, being a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, I never cried in front of my dad until 8 years later, 9 years later, when I'm 21, right now. I never cried in front of him, not because I thought it was weakness, but because I never wanted my dad to worry that something was wrong. And I remember we were talking about my anxiety and my panic attacks, and I just couldn't hold it. I couldn't hold it back. He was freaking out. I remember just letting loose, and he had to hold me, and I remember the next day he had to sleep by me in the bed. He wasn't in the bed. I was sleeping in this little twin bed in the spare room, and he slept on the floor. Just horrible. Just absolutely horrible. That doesn't help either. But I want you guys to know that you are not alone, that you will live through a panic attack. Nobody dies through a panic attack. If someone dies, it wasn't a panic attack. Okay, it was something more serious. But you will make it through it, and if your symptoms and your story matches up with mine like it commonly does for people, you will get through it. Thanks for watching.